Hey, what's up YouTube, Skybadger here, and we're back on day 22 of our 100 player fan game series. So the audio for this video here is recorded in post, and that's just because obviously it wasn't recorded at the time I recorded it, and there's a good reason for that. And that also relates into why it's taken me so long to get to this point. So this video here was filmed across 24 hours and involved 6 hours worth of footage. So I've spent the last month combing through the footage, removing parts that you're not meant to see. Mostly it's not that you couldn't see it, it's that it's just communications behind the scenes. And I'd rather not obviously show my conversations with other people. So I've had to edit out all of those parts every now and then. You'll see Discord flash, and that's just because I've gotten tired of searching for every single split second that's on the screen. So yeah, sorry about that. And yeah, so this video has obviously been sped up because, as you will see in the timer, it's not 6 hours long, it's about 10 minutes. So it's going a hell of a lot faster, and that should hopefully put this in a format that will be more easier to watch. So the first thing to note with this video is I am going to do an Elites versus RLF sort of video in the future on this, but for the time being we're just going to do it like this until I have time to do that properly, because I mean, hey, it took me a month to make this, it's going to take me a year to make that. So in this video what you're seeing is we finally get around to attacking Africa. Now we were going to attack Africa, but he came to us and kind of, well, I wouldn't say threatened us, but just the way he approached us made us think he was going to attack. So Madsen and I approach very cautiously and we go in for the kill. You'll notice at this point we're out scouting and making sure that the area is safe to actually engage. At this point in time we do have air superiority, so we're not afraid to make the most of that and get out and scout so we can see our surrounding and make sure we're not moving into a trap. So before we go any further, I'm just going to read off some numbers about the ships that we have and the size of this combat. So Matis and myself are pretty lucky. We start off with, well, the whole combat we have the numbers advantage. We go into this with 70 ships. Between us we have 3 battleships, 6 carriers, 31 destroyers, 12 cruisers, 18 submarines, and we have a lot of aircraft as well, about 13 to be exact. The opposition, so Fella and his buddy Armin doesn't appear till later on, they have only 50 ships between them, made up of 5 battleships, 1 carrier, 16 destroyers, 8 cruisers, 19 subs, and 1 naval bomber. So as you can see, it's already a little bit in our favor. However, they did come to us, so I mean, what can they truly expect? So with that in mind, I would also like to say, before we go any further, although we do really well in this fight, it's worth noting that South Africa didn't really encounter us at an opportune time. Been stuck on the mobile version, and as you'll see from some of these images, it is a bit of a cluster. I'm not going to say that word. It's really messy, and if you're on the mobile, it would be a hell of a time trying to navigate this battle. So first things first, we're making the most of our range and jumping in and out of combat. We have the advantage here in numbers and firepower, and we don't want to be sitting out there for too long. So what's happening here at the moment is our subs have engaged South Africa's subs, and what they're doing at the moment is they're just tar pitting them, and this means that we can, you know, hit a target that's not moving. Makes it a hell of a lot easier. Our naval bombers have spotted them, hit them with our subs, and we can now move on in to destroy them. At the same time, South Africa, or Fella, is going to be trying to free his subs by using his destroyers. That way he can move his subs towards our ships and tar pit them. It's easier to hit a target that's stuck in combat than to hit one that is moving freely. So that's what's happening there at the moment. We have the advantage in subs, so we pull this off a lot more easier. What we also have is a little trick up our sleeve as well that we don't quite exploit at this point, but it's will come in handy. We'll talk about that soon. So as you can see, it's already starting to get pretty messy. There's multiple timers going on there, and the trick to this sort of combat is keeping track of all those timers. This way we can make sure that when our ships are jumping in and out of combat, we're not restacking them, but we can jump them back into range as soon as they've reloaded, and make sure that we're not in range any longer. That way we can get off as many shots as possible, as fast as possible. As many of you guys will know from playing this game, it's not fun waiting an hour before you can do damage again. So it's really important that we make the most of that. None of our ships are also engaging directly. All of our ships that have range are making the most of it. That's why they're all in separate stacks. They're all engaging individually and then grouping up again. This little bit of footage here is just what's happening elsewhere in the world. Well, we won't really talk too much about that. So as you can see, most of our ships now have fired and they're all retreating back. We can see that Fella, or South Africa, has also tried to pull back a lot of his ships as well, although it's probably a little bit too late. I believe it is around this point in time that we use the trick I was going to talk about. As you can see there, I used High Command to change the fire control on my submarines to hold fire. Now, what that does is it gives your submarines the ability to slip past enemy ships, because obviously your ships aren't going to attack them and your enemy can't see them. So that's what I've done right there, and my subs currently are sneaking past. Matt just traded me, if you saw that in the couple of frames, his subs as well, and I'm going to use the same trick with them as well. So put them on hold fire, and the enemy can't see them, so they can't attack, and they slip right on through, past his submarines and destroyers. So what we're doing there is we're landing them through, so we can then pursuit and chase down Fella's bigger ships and sink them. So our submarines have slipped through and they're now in pursuit, and we're going to try catch them. As you can see there, I think my battleships just got off another shot, and they will be aiming for either the destroyers or the battleships. The trick with this combat is to acknowledge the rock, paper, scissors sort of mechanic. Submarines beat battleships, battleships beat battleships, and destroyers beat submarines. So destroyers are only used to fire at submarines unless there's no other targets, in which case they can be used for other things. Submarines are only really used to attack battleships, and what have I missed here? Battleships are only really used to attack other surface ships, not submarines. And the key is making sure they don't fire at anything else. So that is why all these units are split up separately. We don't want to merge any stacks together. That way they might accidentally attack something they're not intended to. So as this goes on, you'll notice that at all times we have a lot of aircraft out scouting. Now this is really, really important, and it'll be my downfall in the future. But scouting is really, really important. You need to have aircraft out scouting to make sure the surrounding area is safe. Any minute now, maybe in 2-3 minutes, another threat will appear on the horizon, and luckily because we've got scouts out, we'll be able to catch it really, really easily, and it won't get us by surprise, which is really helpful. So keeping aircraft out scouting is really, really important. And in this battle here, we were lucky to have air superiority, so we could deploy our aircraft freely and patrol freely as well. But we just got to make sure that they don't complete any of their patrols and attack the enemy. So imagine dealing with that on a mobile device. That's what South Africa's currently trying to deal with. It wouldn't be easy. So, you know, got to come a little bit of slack. Although he comes out of this battle worse off, it's definitely not. Yeah, fair enough. So you'll notice there as well, I just quickly put my battleships onto force march. I believe what I was doing there was I was trying to catch his battleships and jump in and out of range before he can return fire. I know I do that. I know I pull that trick later on in the combat, but it may have been what I was doing there. So when two ships are moving in the same direction, he wasn't force marching, I was able to catch him, then quickly fire before running my ass in the other direction before he can fire back. I believe that may have been what I was trying to do there. As we can see, because we're out scouting, we have seen the Angolan ships on the horizon. Now, we have a couple of options here. We can stay and we can follow South Africa, but then that's just going to put Angola behind us and we'll be trapped between the two. Instead, what we do to choose here is we choose to retreat, so we're not stuck between two enemy battle groups. And for some reason though, Angola follows, and we're not quite sure why that was. However, he will be taught a lesson in why you don't follow. So at this point here, unluckily for me and Matt, we've expended most of our submarines actually doing a massive amount of damage to Fella. So we can't use those against Angola. Instead, we're just going to have to, you know, really try and manage not to get too close to him and not to get stuck in combat. The trick to these combats is to keep moving. If you get stuck in a direct fight, you're more than likely going to get sunk. And there are a few advantages here and there to directly engaging, but more often than not, you want to keep your distance and make the most of your range. So as you can see here, I'm splitting up my ships again to make the most of it. So I've just split off the battleships, they've just force march trick there again as well. So that didn't actually do too much damage, but you know, it all adds up in the end. So as this combat goes on, we actually pretty much sink the whole Angolan fleet without any major casualties of our own. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start reading off some of the numbers for the whole engagement and who lost what. So we started the fight with 70 units and we only lost 22 in total, and that includes aircraft as well. Within that, we lost 18 submarines, which was all of our submarines, and then we lost 1 destroyer and 3 interceptors. So, you know, we didn't lose any of our capital ships. We didn't lose any destroyers or cruisers. We only lost submarines, and they're generally cannon fodder. I think everyone in the Call of War community agrees that submarines are just cannon fodder. You can throw them around, spam them out, they're really useful, but losing them is not too big of a deal. Now, for the enemy, the Africans, they lost a lot more than we did. So, they lost 3 battleships, no carriers, surprisingly, but they only had 1 in combat, so that's not surprising, I guess. They lost 13 destroyers, 8 cruisers, 12 submarines, and 1 naval bomber. And I mean, that naval bomber was the only one they had there in total, so they lost 37. Although we went into it with an advantage and they only lost twice as many ships than us, the quality of the ships they lost were of a lot more value. 3 destroyers is worth at least 12 submarines, for example, and cruisers and destroyers are not easy to replace as well. So coming out of that, we definitely came out on top, considering we sunk a number, well, 3 enemy capital ships there. So it was actually a really, really good battle, and we definitely came out on top. At the end of the day, though, due to the fact we've lost our submarines, we've lost part of that Papers' rock equation. So that means it is time to move on, and after this combat, although I want to stay around and target some of the subs you're seeing now, Matt persuades me otherwise, and I think he makes a good call here. Pulls me out of combat, and we go home. So that's been day 22. The next video is going to be very similar to this again, where we meet in round 2. So yeah, I'll see you then.